You've seen the chart before, a really quick check-in. So the two targets we were most confident of that had a high level of confluencing, meaning they're occurring at fairly close proximity to each other for Bitcoin, have now been made. So the original setup of that pattern that we called on the break up top here at 13,000, as it broke down, that indicated a 7,600 level has run. The subsequent wind up inverted HVF that over here we drew as being significant and reaffirmed here as it let go of 10 gave an even further target of 7s, which suggested to us that you'll probably trade with a 6, which I made as a statement, which seemed to provoke a lot of people. A 6 in it when we were up still at the 11s. Over here, as we were breaking $6,000 mark, has occurred. Also, in terms of Bitcoin versus the GBP, on a smaller time frame, you have had a proper coming of age here, where both those targets have been traded. It is a slight rally now on the GBP, but it did in fact trade both those two confluence of targets. The only one left outstanding is a similar head and shoulder that was generated roughly with the 5,000 geometry of 15k neckline, 10k down to the 5k in GBP. So both those two, which confluence very tightly with the geometry of this pattern, has now been made as well, to many people's disgust. But let me say, targets made, confluencing targets that are made, eventually lead to a rest and pause, and could be, doesn't have to be, but could be the end of the downside. Especially when you get a sustained spilling and you start to get rounded bottoms, it can be the end. You get certainly progress decay. They are targets for a reason. In other words, it's good places to get out if you were short. In other words, it's going to churn, not progress much further down, maybe rally, etc., etc. So for those that are stuck long, that weren't in the community and didn't have a bunch of powder dry in fiat, you will maybe get some respite. The only downside to all we're saying is that we do have our third and most aggressive target, which was a lower probability possibility, but still always a probability that we worked on, and that is on the head and shoulder side of things, where I've given it many times before, but that is the geometry that generates that level of collapse, 6,082 in dollars, which once again dangerously close to the 5,999 mark, which of course is psychological and has a 5 in it. So but once all three of those were done, or even possibly before, if these two are properly done, we may start to see some degree, once this is run. It's normally run through, I'm afraid. It doesn't stop on a ticky and a dime. They normally have to be overperformed too, and the problem is once you've done that, you're already part of the way to the next one. So it would almost be better for us if it just got over with it and spilled and had an exhaustive spill, and then a nice big hammer of value buying come charging in over here. So yep, that is it. That is your quick uptake. Second target now down as called from the beginning of this year as the structure broke, and it may not be pleasant, but all things will pass.